Welcome to Biz Dev Live. This is the Biz Dev with the C. I am excited to bring you Brynne Tillman today. We're going to talk about LinkedIn. We're going to talk about why she's passionate about LinkedIn and how you can do LinkedIn better. Stay with me.
Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T.
Brynne Tillman is the LinkedIn Whisperer and CEO of Social Sales Link. For over a decade, she has been teaching entrepreneurs, sales teams, and business leaders how to leverage LinkedIn for social selling. As a former sales trainer and a personal producer, Brynne adopted all of the traditional sales techniques and adapted them to the new digital world. She guides professionals to establish a thought leader and subject matter expert brand, find and engage the right targeted market, and leverage clients and networking partners for warm introductions into qualified buyers. In addition, Brynne is the author of the LinkedIn Sales Playbook, a tactical guide to social selling. Brynne, thanks so much for being on the show with me today.
Cameron, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's get right into it. I want people to know a little bit more about, obviously I just gave you a nice introduction there, but how do you help people with LinkedIn? Kind of what is your business and how do you do it? Talk to us about that, and then we'll get into why you got to this place and why you're doing this on a daily basis.
Well, thank you. Well, my business really is about converting connections and content to conversations using LinkedIn, and we really help anyone that is looking to grow their business, mostly B2B, but certainly working with financial professionals and otherwise, to leverage the tool the right way so that they earn the right to get those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to get into why you're passionate about this, but I know that there's some things that people can sort of just within just a few seconds of jumping on LinkedIn can benefit from in terms of this idea of building those relationships. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, there's, an overarching philosophy I think that we need to start with when we are using social platforms. The first and probably the most important way to start using LinkedIn is to think about the other person on the other side of the message should be treated as if they were on the other side of the table. It is very important to not use this as this cold calling pitch tool, because first of all, in today's remote working environment, people are exploiting LinkedIn in a way that is turning a lot of people off. So we need to come from the philosophy of showing up as a resource, handling our networking and our relationships the same way we would in real life, even though this is now real life, and making sure that we detach from our sales goals and attach to the goals of the people that we are networking and ultimately want to sell to. Because in the words of the great Larry Levine, who's one of my favorites, he says, they can sell, your prospects can smell commission breath even over Zoom. So
I love that.
yeah, I love that, right? And so we need to make sure that we're showing up in a way that is about being a resource authentically.
And, it's sort of standing out in my mind, because I know you have a background as a trainer, as a teacher, right? So, my mission in life is education. I think about the moment right now, with everybody switching over to Zoom and education. My kids are on Google Meets all day, but this idea of if you were sitting in a classroom and the teacher had this approach of, I'm just going to cram information down your throat, you weren't going to
Right.
take it in, right? The teacher needs to create that relationship and really connect what you're supposed to learn to you and what's going on in your life. And I find that's really relevant because, if you are just out there selling your product without connecting with your customers, you're that teacher that you didn't want any part of because they were just trying to have you memorize facts and just swallow the data whole. So whether it's commission breath or somebody forcing something down your throat, nobody wants it, right?
Correct.
You want to be romanced a little bit. You want to have some of that relationship. Talk to me about why you're passionate about this and how you got into all of this training and education on LinkedIn.
I mean, the story is a long one, so I'm going to try to bring it down to kind of the core, which is I loved being in sales. I loved the relationship piece. I absolutely loved solving problems for people, but what I hated was cold calling. And I remember in 1992, sitting across from a client, staring at his overflowing Rolodex, tons of business cards that were just begging me to look at them. Obviously, we couldn't, right? But why? Because my best business was coming from client referrals. And I knew that he had at least 3 to 5 people, if not more, sitting in that Rolodex of people that I'd want to have a conversation with. And when I say, Mr. Client, hey, who do you know that could use my products and services the same way you have? They kind of go, I don't know. But if I could see in that Rolodex, I could see who he knew and say, Mr. Client, 9 people that I'd love to get in front of. Can we talk through these names? That's what LinkedIn gives us. So LinkedIn solved a major problem for me. And really the only piece I didn't like about sales, and now I'm 100% bought in that sales is the best career in the world.
Oh, that's really amazing. Yeah, and I know that you have some experience with common everyday businesses that folks are interacting with all the time. I know I was impressed when I was going through your LinkedIn. I saw Dun and Bradstreet. You were a sales and coach trainer for them. You did sales for Bank of America. You were a sales coach and business development person for FedEx. So you've really touched just about everybody.
So, yeah, it's funny because Bank of America was actually a small local bank called Progress Bank. So it's now Bank of America, but there's no Progress Bank page. And FedEx, I worked for Kinko's, actually, if you remember Kinko's, that FedEx bought out. So I hear this, I'm like, I never worked for them, but my history, my history is where my companies ended up. So I'd like to say I contributed to major mergers and acquisitions.
So talk to us about, you were doing sales and training. How did that evolve into, because I imagine, doing sales for a company, going out on your own, being an entrepreneur, but there was a bit of a transition from the mindset of, okay, one day I'm working for, major corporations, and one day I want to do my own thing. So talk to us about what sort of inspired that, why make that move? So
that's an interesting question. I was very fortunate to, after my twins were born, to have some opportunity to stay home with them. So entering back into the workplace, I did that by working at a little bank as a community relationship manager of sorts, just a kind of the networking person to help grow the bank. From that, I was very active in local chambers, and at the same time, LinkedIn started to emerge. And, as part of the bank, I started teaching LinkedIn for both. It was also at a time where everybody was getting laid off. It was, locally, we have a lot of pharma here, and it was during that 2008 time. And so we were teaching LinkedIn both from a job hunting perspective, from a recruiting perspective, and from a sales perspective. And I really fell in love with it. One of my networking partners said, hey, I know that you've been in sales and sales trading for your whole career. You want to start a business with me? And I said, sure. So, I mean, it was really literally that. And then I left.
And that speaks to the power of relationships, right? Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And so, and that business is thriving. It just was a lot of cold calling and a lot of teaching negotiation skills and overcoming objections. And although that stuff is all really, really important for salespeople to know, that didn't inspire me. It didn't excite me. And I was really average at that. What I really excelled in was that top of the pipeline LinkedIn piece. And I said to her that I only want to do this LinkedIn thing. And she laughed and gave me a hug. And I went off and started this is about 7 years ago, a little over 7 years ago, started my own business. And she said, if that LinkedIn thing doesn't work, let me know. You can always come back. And we're 7 years in and I've never been happier.
Oh, that's awesome. And I know you've been involved with so many different things. So talk to me about, the evolution. So you started, so is that 7 years ago you started?
Social Sales Link.
Social Sales Link, right? Yeah. And so I know you've been hands in so many different things. So talk to us about how you developed Social Sales Link, all these different pieces that you've kind of brought together during that time.
Well, essentially, we grew our business in the exact way we teach other people to grow their business, right? So it's about finding and engaging the right people, leveraging your existing network, including clients and centers of influence and networking partners to gain access to targeted buyers. And how do you position yourself as the thought leader and subject matter expert so that you're attracting and teaching and engaging the right people to enter into your network so that you're coming in at a high level of credibility and people begin to raise their hand and say, you know what, I think I want to have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been doing fairly well on LinkedIn lately, and I think a lot of the power is just exactly that. I'm very much focused on, I want to create relationships, and one of the first things that I do, especially if I don't know the person, and in those cases that I do, maybe I've already had a meeting with them, but a lot of times what I'll hope to do is to just set up a call where I can get to know you, even though they may be just somebody connecting with me on LinkedIn. I try to make sure that I'm actually utilizing those connections. So many people have these deep Rolodexes and they don't actually know or interact with the people inside of their contacts, whether that's on LinkedIn or inside their.
Which is the second worst thing you can do on LinkedIn as a salesperson.
So talk to us about that.
Well, so the first worst thing you could do is connect and pitch. I don't know who coined this, but I'm finding, and I never get too edgy professionally, but I love this, that LinkedIn is being invaded by pitch slapping. I think it's hysterical. And so that's the number one worst thing you could do. The second worst thing you could do is connect and forget, right? We're out there prospecting all day long and we're ignoring the people. It's like a bird in the hand, right? Like we're ignoring all the birds that we already have to connect with new birds that we then forget, right? So we need to make sure that we are taking inventory of our existing connections and going through there and identifying who should we be having conversations, what are the conversations we want to have with these people, and what can I do to get them excited to have a conversation with me.
Yeah, this is one of those things like, this is why it's called work, right? Because I think this is the reason most people don't do it, right? Because it's, it takes time to go through your connections, sort of identify. It's always easy. Oh, there's this person over there that I'm not connected with. I'm going to connect with them, right? And
there's a lot of gold in your first degrees.
Right. So what do you do? How do you recommend actually going through that list and targeting the folks that you already know?
So there's two really primary ways. Let's start with exporting your connections. It's about a 8-step process. If you don't know how to do that, just connect with me on LinkedIn and say, send me the 8-step process to exporting my connections. And the connections literally will be exported into an Excel spreadsheet that you get first name, last name, company, position, and the date you connected with them. And it's in the most recent order. So now what you do is you create a column to the left of the first name, or maybe a couple of columns, but I think I'd start with a column on the left and maybe even a column on the right. And you put an X if you want to have a conversation with them. And then in the column all the way on the right, you're going to say what kind of conversation. Is it a prospect? Is it a community leader? Is it a client? Is it an old client that you want to re-engage with? Is it a center of influence, right? And so what kind, and maybe, you have your 5 or 6 different kinds of people that you want to have a conversation with. And you mark them. So I know, or maybe you color code the left-hand side and identify if it's a green X, it's a client. If it's a red X, it's a prospect, right? And so now I go through and then I can see at a glance who I'm connected to that I want to have a conversation with. And I then prepare my 4 or 5 outreaches. Now, one of my favorite ways to start that conversation, no matter who they are, is to leverage the video message on mobile. Right now, clearly video is important. We are hungry to engage with faces, with people, right? So you can hop on once you've identified these people, look them up on mobile, send them a message, you click the little plus sign, the little video, you selfie mode, and you just send out a quick little message that ultimately connects with them in 6 seconds or less, and you can have some kind of call to action. It could be simply like, I'd love to hear how things are going, or what was your pandemic pivot, or depending, or I'd love to reconnect. I know that we networked before in the past, but we haven't talked in a few years. I wanted to see how we might be able to help each other out. Whatever your decision is in how you want to engage, do it with video. The response rate is enormous. Like, we're well over 90% of people responding to those personal video messages.
That's amazing. So I have a follow-up question on that, right? So let's say I'm sending a video, because I've had a lot of luck with sending a very well-written, brief email that says, hey, connect with me. I want to bond with you, especially for folks that are connecting with me for the first time. But if I'm reconnecting with somebody, hey, I really want to connect with you, learn more about you. Here's my Calendly. Please pick a date that works best for you. So that's how I do it. If I'm dropping a video, are you also recommending that you put in something like a Calendly link to pick a date on the calendar or something like that? Or how?
I'm going to say it depends, right? If it's someone you know well, definitely. And sometimes they'll say, Cameron, really would love to reconnect with you. Like, if I know you well, I'm going to stick a little link below to my calendar. Looking forward to our conversation. The challenge is if you do that too prematurely, and then people see it as a pitch. So there may be other kind of little small. So I might say, Cameron is a brilliant podcaster, or going live, or business development expert. I thought you might get some value from a recent Forbes article I read on X, Y, and Z. Knowing what I know about you, I thought that you get some takeaways. Here are my takeaways. I'm just going to stick a little link below. Love to hear your thoughts. I don't even have to send my own content. If I send my own content, it starts to feel a little pitchy unless I know them really, really well. But if you can find a great piece of content that's agnostic to you, great way to start a conversation.
I love that. And that really can start the conversation. And then if you have some sort of sales process, whether it's that Excel sheet or you have your customer management software, setting something to follow up with them, especially if you don't hear back down the line, I'm assuming is kind of the.
Yeah, I just want you to keep bringing value. Don't pitch. And you can't, there are definitely times where I put my Calendly link in, but you can put someone off. I get people that will connect with me and say, I'd love to network with you, set up a call. Here's a link to my calendar. I don't even know them. I know my 15 minutes is really valuable. They haven't earned that right yet. So be really careful and make sure you earn the right before you request that time.
Yeah, I hear that. I know one of the things for me, especially with downtime, and maybe, some other folks are out there feeling like my business is almost completely on hold, CEO token and staffing, right? So, 9 years of sort of killing it, going into COVID, all of our businesses in the live events industry. So I've been definitely pushing. I've just been utilizing my time to network and do this kind of stuff with BizDev Live and build this channel here. So networking has been really big, and I've connected by far in the last 6 months, 7 months, more with people than I ever did during, regular business, because I didn't have the time for it. So I've definitely been making that push for busy folks that are really trying to be protective of their time, but they do want to connect with people like you're saying. And so you're doing this sales piece and everything. How do you recommend making the best of those kind of time slots? You got your calendar link. There's only so many hours a week. How would you go after contacts on LinkedIn with the best use of time scenario for those folks that don't have that time?
Well, you have to be pretty picky with who you're offering that link to. But the way that I've grown my business with LinkedIn is really twofold. The number one way, hands down, are referrals from my clients and my networking partners. So when I run the list of the 18 or 20 people and bring it down to 8 people that they know, and I now request that I can leverage their name or use their name drop when I reach out. Now when I reach out, I'm going to assume that the person wants a conversation based on our shared connection saying we should talk. Half of them will convert. But I have been very, very specific at, I very targeted at exactly who I want to have a conversation with. It's a little different when it's content, right? Because you're attracting a lot of people that may not have been hyper focused upon. Often I will start with offering a lot of resources and seeing, and I have some links. They use smart links with LinkedIn, and I have a free resource so I can see when people sign up for it, which is linkedinlibrary.com. We get tons of people that just sign up, don't know where they come from, but I can vet them before I reach out. They can still have all the free resources. It's awesome. Enjoy it. Love it. But I can look through and say, 1 out of 25 of them I'm going to reach out to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Talk to me a little bit about the free resources, because this is something that, in marketing, if you're in the space all the time, whether you're listening to Gary Vaynerchuk or on any amount of podcasts, I've certainly said it, having that lead-in resource, piquing people's interest and providing almost your best content for free. How do you recommend, for folks that are operating as sales folks in their businesses, how to offer something for free to kind of bring people in?
Well, how to offer, so how to offer it is interesting. It's the philosophy first. I pulled from a couple of places, Bob Berg and Go Giver, and from Michael Port, Heroic Public Speaking, who said years ago, give away so much value that you're afraid you gave too much, and then give more. When you come from that perspective, you earn the right to have a conversation, right? People say, man, if this is the free stuff, imagine what a conversation would look like, right? So how do you do it? One of the ways is to use, there's curation, there's origination, and there's engaging, right? Like those are sort of the ways that we show up. If you want to talk about original content, I can go in that direction. But if, one of the products that LinkedIn offers, which is available in Sales Navigator Teams, and you only need one person for a team, is just $130 a month. They have a feature called Smart Links. And when you give someone, you upload content to it, and when you give someone that link, you can see how long they're there, if they downloaded, all that fun stuff. The insights are absolutely magical. So, you can send the free resources to an enormous amount of people, and maybe only 10% click through, but you know who they are. And so you know how to follow up. Another thing that I love to do is drive people to polls. Polls is such a great way to drive engagement because they get to share their insights and you get to see those insights so you can see where they are. we have a pretty comprehensive e-learning coaching platform. And we have what we call our LinkedInlibrary.com, where we curate all the podcasts I'm on, all the blog posts that we've done. So it's a curation of everything we put out publicly in one place, and it's constantly being updated. We also have the added benefit that if you are a member of the free LinkedIn library, we do once a month, we do members only webinars, not just with us, but with some of the greatest sales and digital sales and marketing brains in our industry. I'm very fortunate that most folks, when they ask to be a guest, raise their hand and say, I'd love to be. And so we bring in some of the greatest folks to teach our members only, but you could be a member for free at our first level, right? So there's some great benefit, and we've tracked a lot of really excited people.
That's amazing. So talk to me about some of these tools. One of the things, and I noticed you using the tools on some of your posts, I've had luck with, putting up a video or a photo on LinkedIn, creating an interactive post, asking a question, hashtagging, tagging some people so that they actually comment on that post, and then it goes. I know one of the posts I was looking at that you just recently did was over 3,000 views. So I know I've had success with that. I know you're having success with it. Talk to us about things I haven't been using, or polls. Talk to us about some of these engagement tools that you can use on LinkedIn to sort of bring in attention. Obviously, if you're utilizing some of these free resources, you can publicize those on LinkedIn, and they can get a lot of attention past your first and second connections. So talk to us about that.
Well, I love Canva, Canva, I pay for it because it's worth it for me, and I have Teams Edition because I have lots of people on it in my group. But it's mostly free, and it's amazing. Polls is completely free on LinkedIn, and probably one of the most powerful business development tools that we have available to us today. Why? You get to ask a discovery question, and you get to see who answers it and how they answer it. You can qualify buyers simply by putting out a poll. You can also get that poll into the inbox, and I just say, hey, Cameron, doing a quick little poll about people in the events industry. Your insights would mean a lot to me. And I send it to you, and based on my question and the 4 answers, I get to see whether or not, you are someone I want to go deeper into conversation with. And no one goes, everyone's like, I want to share. It's a quick little click to share my ideas. Very few people don't answer a poll.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's something that I have not utilized, and now I'm excited to try to
Good.
the test. Yeah. I think one of the things that's really interesting about social media, very much like financial investing, right? The time that you put in, it can really pay off. The consistency has to be there. Just putting your money into a savings vehicle and pulling it out tomorrow isn't going to get you a lot of financial results. Similarly, if I go into social media and just do it for one day and then don't go back to it and pull all my attention and resources out of it, it's not going to get me very far. So I appreciate the fact that if I had been pushing forward on some of these social media things the way I'm pushing forward now 10 years ago, right, I'd be a lot further along in that game. And so people understanding that, like, listen, it's not going anyplace. If you start investing the time and resources in connecting with people and engaging with people in a meaningful way, it will create meaningful results for you. Something that I think people should take away from these conversations. Talk to me a little bit about, when folks are working with you, some of the things that you sort of help them through in terms of the strategy. And I know that you built a company with resources. So what are some of the things that you bring to bear to sort of help alleviate? Because I know a lot of this, when somebody hears, oh my goodness, polls and going on to Canva, I use Canva every day. I'm creating thumbnails for the YouTube videos. I think it's really important. I look at other people's channels and like, man, they should be doing better thumbnails. And like, I understand how to do that now. Talk to us about some of the information and tools that you are bringing to bear to sort of help people through some of these time intensive pieces of the puzzle.
Well, one of the free resources that's inside the linkedinlibrary.com is a day in the life of a social seller. So it can take you through sort of a cadence and what that can look like. I think that's been a good resource for people. But, there's a lot of different moving pieces. Am I checking my notifications and engaging? Am I looking at my outstanding connection requests every day and accepting or replying with a welcome message? Or, am I, there's so many different moving parts. Am I engaging with the right people? Am I sharing the right content? Am I having client conversations around who they know? Am I having networking meetings every single day with potential referral partners? So there are so many things that can take 30 seconds to do, up to 10 minutes. Not huge, long investment of time, but that have a huge ROI. So what we often say is using LinkedIn the right way may have a little bit of a longer outreach, but it's a much shorter outcome. Everything that we do is that, at least that we teach, drives conversations. The challenge for people that are often like, well, I've tried LinkedIn and it doesn't work, is they've been doing random acts of social, right? They show up and occasionally they do something and sometimes they do something else. But, it's like getting in shape, right? Like if you, walk 2 miles one day and then don't do anything for 3 weeks, that's not going to help you, right? If you go to the gym one day and work out really hard and then nothing for a month, it's not going to help you. This is consistent. It's all sales is consistent activities every single day in little bits that build on itself. Oh, you're muted, Cameron.
Thank you. I had to mute my coworker's request. So one of the things that's so interesting about that is I find the same thing happens in the association space, right? So you signed up for membership, you're going to monthly meetings, and then or maybe you're sponsoring an event, and you're at this point where after things have happened, oh man, I didn't get ROI out of it. And for folks that kind of know what they're doing, they're like, well, did you engage with people? Did you create relationships? Did you provide value? Did you give people a nice, easy way to access you and the things that you do? Mm-hmm. Did you really, do some outreach and show, not just, put up your booth and your banner and everything, but did you show really, case study wise, what, did you put effort out there?
Did you earn the right? Did you earn the right to get the conversation? And there are so many, which I'm totally against, the automated outreach. There are so many bots out there because people want an easy button. There is no easy button to relationships. There's no pixie dust to getting someone to want to engage with you. It takes authentic communication and being a resource and detaching from the sale and attaching to being of value to that person on the other side of the message or table, right? And when we can do that, we will build the right relationships that convert to opportunities.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And I'm going to show off for everybody that's watching that might have been confused about LinkedIn Library. So if you go to linkedinlibrary.com, you'll find this and you can sign up and you can get all these tools that Brynne has been talking about. So the on-demand, free webinars, interactive stuff. So you can check this out and all this stuff is free. Mm-hmm. Very cool. That idea of showing up, engaging, providing the value, giving people a reason to connect with you is so big. So I love that. Talk to me about what folks can do. And just going back, as it was the idea of it's like exercise, right? If you go out and you spend, 16 hours on LinkedIn today, you will you're gonna fry your brain, right? There is such thing of going out and doing too much. So you want to take it in manageable, easy little bites, get comfortable with it. Same thing for the association world. You go out and you contact every, it's going to be too much, right? So getting yourself into manageable little bits, getting, into that customer resource management tool, whether it's downloading your contacts onto Excel or actually using one of the beautiful softwares that are out there to help you manage all your contacts, right? But doing it in manageable little bites, following up, making it easy for yourself to create these relationships and follow up is really important. I know that you were talking about LinkedIn Library, but talk to us about the way that you work with clients again, just in terms of how you kind of coach them through the process.
There's a lot of different ways to do this, but generally we have a public class that they go through, and we have that comes with that. It's $297. We run them every month, and then they get an 8-week, 16-session group coaching access. So they go through training. They have access to 2 times a week to come on, ask our questions. We can give specific guidance on what they're doing. And that's generally how it works. We do private classes, which has been our business before the pandemic pivot. 90% of what we did was corporate training, flying to companies and doing 2-day workshops. But we've now moved most of that online, and we even do private online. So if there's a group of 5 or more, we'll do a private class. Awesome. But that's what we do.
So talk to us about, what you're seeing right now. We're, the last 7 months dealing with, global pandemic, online social selling, more important than ever because we can't see each other in these, live events and brick and mortar situations. So talk to me of what you think the future is going to be. I think we have a very interesting 2021 coming up. I'm excited about 2022 for Toth Event Staffing, not only from business back to normal, whatever that new normal is going to be. I'm excited to do live events again. But I think that the world has forever changed now. We've all gotten more comfortable with Zoom. I know Toth Event Staffing's hiring process is different. For folks that are looking for work, what are you seeing in terms of the new normal or the progress and movement towards a new way of doing things?
So I think we all have to really embrace virtual selling. I love live events. I really hope that we get back to those pretty quickly. But I don't think we're going to fly for sales anymore. I think 100% of sales, like field salespeople, are now inside salespeople. And I think that's the major difference. Where, hopefully with events and trade shows and conferences, that all comes back. And so that travel will be there. But flying, to see a prospect, to sit across from them, I think or even driving hours, I think those days are over. I also think networking, and groups like BNI are now starting 100% virtual networking groups. No more lunches or breakfasts. Not no more. They still will have those, but they are making the pivot that you'll have groups that only meet virtually. So I think that there's that's not going to go anywhere. And the one industry I'm worried for is the commercial real estate, because I think a lot of people are not going back to the office.
Well, I think this is the thing, right? So I'll weigh in on this because I think the positive, good news is always there, right? There's always transitions, right? And I really, when you were talking about the 2008 thing, and I said, well, what a great thing to sort of get into LinkedIn. And that's, we've seen so many examples of businesses being started up and built within the challenging times, right? We know that the fire forges the best steel, right? This idea that these downturns do create some amazing businesses. So I very positive on the note. I think obviously commercial businesses are going to go through a lot of flux and a lot of change, and there's going to be some winners and there's going to be some losers. But I think, look at a market like New York City, how super overpriced they are, versus, the rest of the world when it comes to that real estate. So, I think some businesses are going to get some great opportunities, even as we are coming up into this new year. I was able to secure, through having somebody that was amazing working with me in office, through the shared workspace kind of stuff, in the Chrysler building right across from Grand Central.
Yeah.
Right. And, Tothavan Staffing does all right, but we're not like a Fortune 500 company, and we're not, making millions of dollars. So to secure space in a building like that was a pretty big get for us, but it was a part of this, shared space kind of economy thing that's going on. So I think, the good news for commercial real estate is that there's a lot of innovative people out there that are going to make it work, and we're just going to see different things. I think the shared workspace, I think people don't necessarily want to work at home all the time. So even though, people may not, IBMs and all that of the world that have all these multiple huge offices, they may move to not having people in the office all the time. These shared workspaces are going to be a big deal. And we're going to see a better, I think, level of what's the word for it? People are going to enjoy their working spaces more, because they're going to have more say and input in where they go, because they're voting with their feet. It's not like I work for a company and they choose what my working situation is going to be. I'm going to be choosing the working situation. It's sort of interesting because you can already see that in so many places. Like, all right, I forget, I saw on LinkedIn that one big company is moving to no matter where you are, the pay is consistent. So you can move to New Mexico and receive the same pay as if you were living in San Francisco. We're not going to say, because you're living in San Francisco and paying so much for rent, we're going to pay you more over here. So it's going to change the way people live and work. And I think that's a net positive.
It's interesting. One of my daughter's best friends is an admissions counselor for an Ivy League school. And so she used to have to be physically in the spot. She has a sister that needed some help in another state. And they're like, yeah, go. Doesn't matter whether you're here or not. So she never would have been able to do that. So she was able to move to a completely different state and still be the admissions officer at a huge university. And they were amazing in letting her just move. The funny thing is, they wouldn't have even known it if she didn't tell them, because nobody's going in, right? So anyway, but she did tell them, and she they were great, and they're like, yeah, go, and she can still do her business. So yeah, that flexibility is amazing.
No, I think that shift that the world is going through, and that understanding that you can do this. So that kind of brings us right back into the LinkedIn conversation. So whether you're looking for a position, a partnership, a new person to work for your company, or simply a sale for your product or service, this idea of your virtual presence becomes much more important than it ever was before. I'm certainly surprised now. We've talked a lot about engaging people, our connections and everything, but we haven't talked about the profile piece of this, right? So in building out your personal branding and building out your LinkedIn page, what should be on there? Because now you may be in a place where you don't have employment, or you're looking for better employment.
So I'm going to start with, I do not at all talk about the LinkedIn profile page unless you're in a business development role. There are very specific things that bots are looking for, and I don't know that. So I have a few people that I refer. From a business development role, you need to hit 5 things. You need to resonate with your buyer, number 1. You have to create curiosity. You have to teach them something new. You have to get them thinking differently about their current situation. and you have to lead them to your solution. If you can do all 5 of those things in your profile, you've nailed it.
All right, so go through that one more time because I think that was huge.
You have to resonate with the buyer. So when they show up, they go, yep, she works with me. You have to create curiosity, where my one friend, Kellen Ann, calls it the pug tilt, where they go, right? They got to create a curiosity. That's what keeps them going, right? Next, you have to teach them something new. If you sound like everyone else, they leave. So they have to have like an aha moment, like, oh, interesting. That was cool, right? Then that aha moment, that thing that you just taught them, needs to get them thinking differently about their current situation. Your biggest competition is status quo. I don't care what you sell or what you do. The one thing you have to overcome is that where they are today is good enough. And you do that by teaching them to think differently about their current state or their current situation.
I love that.
Yeah, and then you have to lead them to your solution. So you could do that all day long, but if you teach them something new, but it doesn't lead to what you do, then you're selling for someone else, right? So you have to make sure that everything you do gets them to raise their hand and say, you know what, I'd love to have a conversation with you because this really resonated with me.
You know, it's amazing because I think in getting the LinkedIn messages, the invites to connect, you can see when people are doing this wrong so easily, right? Or so concretely, you know, that hitting you with the pitch. All right, that sounds interesting. How do I get it, right? You know, is there a call to action and then, you know, a place to go? Is there something that, you know, is actually interesting about your product, or are you just simply saying it and just putting it out there? And that's, you know, honestly, I've definitely been that person that's just like raising my hand, but I'm not, you know, teaching something new. And it's interesting when you hit those notes where people sort of perk up and get excited and they're like, oh, that's cool. Like even something as simple, you know, with Totem and staffing, we're in the service industry. So even though most people you wouldn't think are interested in how to carry 3 plates by simply demonstrating a skill like that, I did that in a networking session as an introduction to myself, and everybody remembered that for months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. It just giving people something interesting and engaging, teaching them something new. It doesn't need to be cool to you. It just needs to be something cool.
Be careful. It needs to be something cool that leads to your solution. Like, right. We can share, like I teach LinkedIn and I could share all day long search engine optimization for your website. And I could teach them really cool things that I learned, but at the end they'll get all excited and they're like, oh, so tell me about more search engine optimization. I'm like, oh, I got to introduce you to Raj because he does that, right? I learned it from him and I could share it, but if I'm sharing things, and we do this a lot more with content than our profile, where we're sharing things that don't lead to conversations, and that's a mistake.
All right, so give us some good examples of ways to lead those introductions into conversations.
You mean the content into conversations, or
yeah.
So I get, just like the profile, you've got to hit all those 5 things in order to do that, but you've got to make sure that what you are sharing really hits those 5 points, because that's what gets them to raise their hand. What we typically will do is, or often will do, is we'll share content that even if it got them excited, wouldn't create an opportunity for us. So how do we do that? I mean, number one, you have to start capturing your genius. And that happens in a lot of different ways, but it starts with the Q&A with your customers and your prospects. Salespeople believe they are not content creators, when in actuality, they are the best content creators in all of the world. They're better than marketing. Because they are having the real conversations every day in the marketplace. The challenge is they're not capturing it. So they have to start being hyper aware, and it can happen Now, with most of our conversations on Zoom, if we're recording our conversations with the permission of our clients and our prospects, we can really begin to capture that genius. In emails, like just be hyper aware, like when you say something really good, write it down. That's good content. Typically, if that conversation is moving your prospects through the pipeline, that's probably really good content that will help your buyers, your virtual prospects, move closer and closer to your solution.
I love that. I think those type of strategies and tactics where we're able to definitely document the process and then use that moving forward, right, just makes things so much easier. We talk about that in the marketing space, and that conversation and the sales process. Don't try to recreate the wheel every time you're sending a message, and having a conversation. Use what works. I threw up on my screen
one of my Canva creations.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just going to throw this up here. If you're looking to get more great content like this, I want you to follow Brynne Tillman on LinkedIn. You can go down below and you can find her contact. She shares stuff like this all the time. Definitely go to LinkedIn Library. Who are people that you're trying to connect with, Brynne, that would be good connections for you that you would really like to connect with?
So really we have two groups of folks, right? There's the entrepreneur, business owner, coach, consultant that is responsible for growing their own business. And that's where our public class and our community and our group coaching is incredibly valuable. And leaders of sales teams, which is the core of what we've always done, which are tailored sales training. And that's what we do. We're not social media experts. We are sales trainers that teach LinkedIn to create conversations. It's not about, marketing. It's really for the salespeople. And although we'll talk about content, it's really content that can be managed and owned by a salesperson. So, sales teams are our core of what we've done. We've had small teams of 5+ people, as big as, huge organizations like Aramark and Comcast and other companies as well, right? So we handle all levels, and the sales teams, and no matter how big the company is, it's a very intimate program.
That's awesome. Talk to me about how people should connect with you. How can they find you? I know I got the LinkedIn and the website down below, but shout it out for folks and let people know the best way to get in touch with you.
So I'm still the only Brynne Tillman on LinkedIn, which is fabulous. Socialsaleslink.com is our website. And again, LinkedInlibrary.com is where you're going to get our best free stuff. That's
awesome. All right. And I'm going to just ask you to say goodbye to everybody. I really appreciate your time and doing this with me today. I think we gave people some concrete guides to getting some referrals, right? Making sure that you're able to talk about your connections that you have in common, to connect with people, kind of some of the key philosophies in connecting with people, and how to position yourself as a resource for your LinkedIn connections. So let people know how to get in contact with you, and I encourage everybody to do so.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. If you do connect with me on LinkedIn, let me know you saw me on Cameron's show.
Excellent. All right. Hang on for me, Brynne. See you in a bit.
Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11